Episode 100 today on the Teaching Tax Flow podcast. We're going to switch things up, do things a little different, actually a lot different this episode, but some things remain the same. Let's take a brief moment and thank our episode sponsor.
This podcast is sponsored by The Mortgage Shop. Are you looking to qualify for an investment credit loan without jumping through hoops? That's easy. They have loans with LTV up to 89.99%. Exploring their products and discovering how they can work for you is simple. Just visit mortgage.shop or call 865-325-2566 and tell them TTF sent you.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Teaching Tax Flow podcast. And even if this is your first time, welcome to the Teaching Tax Flow podcast. So as Chris knows, who this guy is, you can see him here on the screen if you're watching. If you can't see it, you might not be missing out on a whole... No, I'm just kidding. I won't go down there. But I do want to say something. I can't believe it. We're at episode 100, and we're going to run into a lot of... We're just going to have a great discussion on this episode about teaching tax flow, about the podcast, about Chris's hair, all kinds of stuff we're going to chat about. But more importantly, I can't believe that we've made it to 100 and where this actually all started from. So, Chris, do you actually remember where we started this at? Like, where did we do podcast number 1?
But before we jump into that, I wanted to break down some numbers for you. This is going to be filled with some surprises. This is an unorthodox episode. About 50% of podcasts make it to episode 10, and many of them stop after only 3 episodes. About 30% make it to 20 episodes. About 20% make it to 50 episodes or more. Only 10% of episodes make it to 100, or 10% of podcasts make it to 100 episodes. And less than 1% make it to 1,000. So I'm very confident we will make it to 1,000, which would be, oh man, that's like 20 years from now.
We got a ways. By then, we might not even have podcasts. It might transform into, this whole thing, just where, you think of it and here it comes, down into your brain, all this. You're downloading knowledge instead of, downloading podcasts.
Well, I have a feeling if things keep going in the direction they are, and we would probably be recording more than once a week. But we are one of the top 10% of podcasts as far as longevity, and that's an accomplishment right there. Now, let's think back to the first one. The first one ever, to about 2 years ago, since we have been religiously recording these every week, okay? And 2 years ago, you and I and a couple other of our associates attended a conference in Orlando, Florida, a real estate conference. We had just launched the Teaching Tax Flow Educational Library, and then we went over to my family's vacation rental in Panama City Beach, Florida, drove across, and we always try to piggyback these trips with some strategic planning, and we had on our radar, we want to do a podcast, right? And then I don't know how this happened, but we were just woke up and we're like, wow, when should we launch a podcast? This is October of 2022, thinking, man, maybe January of 23. And then we just said, let's just do it now, right? Let's just record it. Let's see what happens. Because I remember just thinking to myself, there's never a better time than now. Just put it on tape. It's good at, everything will get better over time. The first one, so there was a good amount of people, in this trip. There was someone in the party ordered a pizza let's just say past our normal bedtime. And due to this circumstance, there was an empty pizza box sitting in the there's a pizza box with a couple cold slices of pizza in it, and then that pizza box was then vacant. And you and I were like, okay, let's just start this podcast. We started it in the living room of our vacation home on the top of a pizza box with a cruddy microphone. If you ever go back and listen to episodes 1, 2, or 3, the audio quality is not good. Kids would say cringy. I think the content was really good, what we were talking about. But, we had this theory with the podcast, and it's better to be done.
And Chris, maybe this will actually kind of support that too. So I had reached out to somebody in Florida, because that's where we were, right? Well over a year ago. So I was going back in text messages the other day, and it was actually August of 2023, and I feel like Jerry Springer right now, where it's like, come on down. So I actually had them mail me something, if anybody's watching this. So maybe this pizza box looks familiar, sir.
Oh my gosh, that is.
So the one we used was folded in half, and yeah, it had some grease stains on the back of it. But Crystal, actually, Rich, I think it was Rich that packaged this up and mailed it to me in August of 23, and I was holding on to this darn thing.
Wow.
For just the right moment to bring this out. So just as everybody knows, so I live in Michigan. They packaged this thing up, which, by the way, there's not a fold, there's not a crease, anything in this. I can only imagine what the conversation was when they went in there and said, hey, I'm here. I got to pick up a pizza box for a friend. Not a pizza. I just need a box, and I need to mail it to him. But yeah, I've been holding on to this thing for quite a bit. So thank you to Zolo Pizza, by the way, in Panama City Beach. I will throw myself under the bus. Yes, I ordered a pizza to be delivered at 3 a.m. the night before. Who knows what we were doing? We were probably brainstorming some wild and crazy ideas on stuff. But yeah, it came in handy. We folded that pizza box in half, put a little lavalier mic, clipped it on the top, and we called it a podcast. And here we are, 100 episodes down. So we did something right.
Indeed, we actually, Crystal Ball, who was our guest on the 4th podcast episode. One of the things we're going to talk about are what kind of surprised us about this podcast. When we first started it, we thought we would do maybe once a month, maybe once a quarter, a different real estate market spotlight. And we recorded some of those. And the first one was a Panama City Beach rental market. However, this podcast really took off into a more holistic tax planning and strategy podcast instead of just for real estate investors. So many of our real estate related episodes aren't focused on a specific market, but yes, and so those first 3, 4, maybe, golly, I think first 3, 4, maybe 5 podcasts, were
and then we finally got our ducks in a row. I want to say it was much later, maybe episode 40 or so, where we upgraded our equipment, our process, expanded our team. We did a lot to it. I mean, it was, and Chris, I remember specifically too, I can't remember what episode it was, but we're very early on. We're like, oh my gosh, we had 100 downloads on this thing. Like, wow, people listen to this thing 100 times. Like, that's pretty cool. And now, we're pushing 30,000 on all these episodes. It's cranking. I mean, and give it, me being the marketing guy, I have to be devil's advocate a little bit. Sure, there's some, bots in there a little bit. We all know that exists, but I think the coolest thing about this, and Chris, I don't know if you feel the same way. I know we've talked about it on a few episodes, is, we'll be at these events, for tax pros, and here's people that neither of us know, thinking of topics and referencing topics from 2, 4, 6 months ago. And we're just sitting there like, oh man, did we really do that? I think the first time I heard somebody say something about a topic, it took me a moment. And I'm like, you sure you got the right show? But yep, cool. I'm running with it. And sure enough, man, it's great to see. And to support what you said too, it changed direction pretty drastically, right? Like we had an idea what we thought the audience would be engaged with at first. And then the community drives the content, now, and not us. Like we do not come up with these topics. Pretty much all these topics are suggested to us, or they're a byproduct of your conversations in the private practice world, which is perfect, right?
Right. I'd say another kind of, as we go from looking back at this podcast and some of the surprises that we've had, that we learned that we need to build a community, and a community is going to sharpen itself. So in January 2023, so like 4 months after starting the podcast, we ended up starting a private Facebook group. And that private Facebook group has grown. It's called Defeating Taxes. If you've listened to this, I'm going to pull up some of the most recent data. But I think we're pushing 2,000 members of and this is a private Facebook group. So you've got to be a human. You've got to agree not to be a meanie. for your email address, so we know you're a real person. But that Facebook group has been really a gem as far as inspiring us to what our topics could be. Because one of the fears whenever you start a podcast is, unless you're doing something on sports where there's constantly games going on, is, are we going to run out of topics? Are we going to run out of things to talk about? And we really have. I mean, there's so many things to talk about in the tax planning and strategy world. So we don't struggle to find topics. We really struggle to find what's the most important and relevant topic. And like you said, one of the things that we've done is we've honed in on what topics are going to be engaging and entertaining and apply to as many people as we can, so that people enjoy it. And a lot of those topic ideas come right from the Defeating Taxes private Facebook group. And it's kind of neat. About twice a month, we'll pull the group and basically say, hey, who's got an idea for a topic? I would say 60% at least of the topics thrown out there, we already have a podcast on. So it makes me feel like we're hitting that. Then we'll post the pod.
If anything, I think we just shuffle around our schedule a little bit based on suggestions, right? Because me and you, we get together in person roughly about every 6 weeks or so, because obviously we run virtually. And I think now, even if I were to look at our we'll call it our podcast calendar, roster schedule, whatever. We have topics, really good, relevant topics. Honestly, into January. And then, some of them might pop up. Somebody might bring up they might make a post, they might make a comment, and then it kind of spirals off into a deeper discussion. And then really what we do is we just bump it up to the top and kind of shuffle around our schedule. And that's, it's kind of the glorious thing about us not having a team of 200 people is we're very agile. So we can jump around and move stuff. We got a pretty expansive team of professionals between ourselves, the private practice, the MRR Institute, all this kind of plays together in this web, if we will. Not to mention all the outside influence we have from other partners, connectors, everybody in there, all the other voices of teaching tax flow, which there's a hint, actually, when I say voices, we'll release something to you here shortly. No, you know what? You don't want to hear. I think I'm good, but also, I crank music at, volume 110%. So, I'm kind of deaf. But it is what it is.
We won't get into what I've got. One more surprise for the guests. Your fascination with Nickelback.
I am a card-carrying member of the Nickelback fan club, might I add.
And that's all right.
So here's a funny story about that, Chris. I don't even know if you know this one. So, and yes, I am a very big Nickelback fan, but I'm also a country music fan and everything else. I'll keep this one very short. And I was kind of starstruck after the fact because I didn't realize it. Long story short, I lived in Columbia, South Carolina. A band plays out there. We end up hanging out with these guys. Went to Waffle House at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. This was like 15 years ago. But I'm a late night guy if you haven't figured that out yet, between the pizza box and now this story. Anyways, hanging out with his band. Another band I was a big fan of, but not starstruck. But I don't really get starstruck. I'm kind of a talker anyways. I don't really get nervous. Hanging out with these guys, come to find out like 2 months later that this guy is actually Chad Kroeger, who's the singer of Nickelback's cousin. I'm like, what in the, seriously? Like, that's pretty cool for me. Again, Nickelback fan. And then he eventually became the lead singer of one of my other favorite bands, 8 years down the road. So I got tons of pictures. We will not be sharing those with anybody. But anyways, it's kind of like, tax planning. I always find ways to reel back in tax planning because I had no idea that this was even a thing until a couple years ago. You could have something right in front of your face and you don't know what it is until after the fact, right? Where, Chris, we have discussions with people all the time and like, you kind of hear tax planning, and we're not going to go into detail what it is. That's not the point of this episode, is not to educate too much, but there's so many resources out there on all these topics, right? You could learn how to drywall. You could learn how to, trim your dog's nails. You can do all this stuff on YouTube, right? So, Chris, what should we save it? Save the news, what we're going to talk about regarding that for a little bit? Let's do it.
Couple minutes about Well, so surprises, yeah, definitely we've pivoted. It's hard when people understand the segment of tax preparation. They understand maybe the importance of tax planning and strategy, but in general, there aren't that many. It's a toughie, right? Because there aren't that many content creators and podcasts out there on this topic. So we can't, but it's nice being one of the few out there. And so yeah, the surprises of how interactive our community's been. Before we talk about our changes and some of our fun stuff going on, I just want to first, like, a heartfelt thank you to all of our guests. I hesitate to even mention any of them, but we have had some absolutely amazing guests. I'm looking at, how many guests we've had? We've had,
there's a lot of it.
About 30 guests, right? And I really have enjoyed them. We've had people that are top notch in their space as far as real estate. We've had people that we've had literally rock stars on our podcast. We've had specialty tax firms. We've had people, other industry professionals on. We've had people that deep dive into different tax strategies. We have people that specialize in dealing with the IRS, and we've got it's just amazing, right? And that's one of the cool things with the feedback that we received from the community is, John, I'll give you an example. I think we did an episode on 1031 exchange, and we'll go back and dive into it deeper. Or if we do a 101 episode, we'll dive deeper into something. And many of our guests, a couple of them we have returned, and would have any of them back. So that has been really amazing, and not just the level that we are getting as guests, but also that you've done a great job in bringing it all together and making us sound so good. I think that's something that people don't see, what goes on behind the scenes and how good of a job. For you to make us sound good,
we have our moments. And, one of the things, Chris, obviously we mentioned earlier on in this show too, those that are watching, right? So that's a new comment to come out of our mouths, right? So here we are, episode 100. And one of the pivots that we're making, and, we're going to video. We have such a good time doing this that, we want people to kind of engage with this. So obviously the audio will still be available everywhere, but we're going to start doing every one of these on video. Our guests are up for it that are playing for it. Frankly, I really look forward to it. And there's, a lot of time goes into editing these, not editing things out, just really clarifying things, planning these, getting the guests together, distributing the content out everywhere. It's paid off. I'm pretty proud of what we've done, not only because we've gotten to episode 100, but again, to support what you said again, the quality of guests. The quantity is easy. You can get guests from anywhere. You can go on a Facebook page and, have guests coming out, thin air, but the quality of them, the feedback we've gotten from those guests, the content we have. And I think we do a really good job as a team, as a whole team of teaching tax flow, is that, we're not selling anything. This is content it's out there. I wouldn't even say that we're not creating anything. We're taking something that's so confusing. Think about it as, a college course book, right? You get slapped this thing on the counter, you go to buy it, before the first day of class, and you don't know what's in it. You have an idea what's in it. Maybe some of it, you might open a page and say, wow, I'm really not looking forward to this. But eventually, the outcome is going to be very positive if you put the time into it. That's kind of what teaching tax flow is, right? Like, we're taking all the information that the IRS is putting out there, condensing it down into such small bite-sized pieces that you're getting the outcome that's best for you, but without having to go through the entire book to find it. We're literally ripping out the page and handing it.
Like you mentioned, some of the exciting announcements we have on this podcast, going to YouTube, having all of our episodes, actually all of our first 99 episodes are on YouTube right now on the Teaching Tax Flow YouTube page. Here's the situation. What it's kind of looking back and our surprises. We created a custom beautiful educational library that we ended up pivoting in making a basic membership absolutely complimentary. However, we feel like we want to get this information into more hands, and it is really a calling for us. And because there's just not enough tax planning and strategy for people out there. And that's why we're moving this over to YouTube. Sure, yeah, there's some challenges, right? We both enjoyed recording the podcast in our pajamas, muting ourselves whenever we wanted to, multitask. Yeah, but this is a real big pivot to get it out there, but it's an important one. Putting names with faces, allowing our guests to be more to be seen, not just heard, and ultimately moving not only all of these. We're taking all of our educational content, these lessons that are 5 minutes or less, and moving them onto YouTube for free without any type of gateway, just as a service to the community, is a huge undertaking. However, it's the right thing to do for us. So not only are all these episodes going to be on YouTube, definitely check out our YouTube channel. Trust me, we're not professional YouTubers. We don't make any money. We don't make any considerable money more than buying a Starbucks or two every year. Oh, Starbucks, you should be a sponsor, but I'll get to the sponsors next. That's not why we're doing this. And ultimately, teaching tax flow teaches us a process for tax planning that starts with knowing where you're at on your tax return, diagnosing your situation based on your marginal tax rate, prescribing using different tax strategies, using what we call our IQ test. Is the strategy suitable for you? Think about that as your financial fitting room. And then implementation. There's way too much ideas unless, I always say ideas are cheap, implementation is valuable. And ultimately, by putting this show on YouTube and putting all of our educational content on YouTube, we're letting people in to all 4 steps of the process and giving people access to knowledge and that they'd never have access to before. So like you said, John, some of our guests are implementation partners, meaning, man, I heard about a 1031 exchange, but at least once a week, we get someone in the Facebook group saying, I'm thinking about doing the 1031 exchange. Who do I talk? Hey, why don't you, now you can put a name with a face. Now you can see that lesson. There are several different types of implementation partners, and that's the value of being in this community. And we've really, ultimately, we just broke down every wall available or every wall out there for someone to not be in our community. So ultimately, anyone can be in the Teaching Tax Flow community, and it's your personal journey of how much because you're going to get out of it what you put into it. But if you just want to be on the sidelines, watch some of the content and apply it on your own, that's okay. I think one of the other surprises, I know I'm going backwards, are how many tax professionals are in our community. There are a ton, and we love that. Iron sharpens iron in our world. That's the way I believe in collaboration over competition. So back to the changes, man. So proud of what we put together. Especially the work you do. I'm making it look so good. I want more people to have access to that. So all of our courses are on YouTube right now. All the podcasts are on YouTube. Those are 2 major changes, and I'm thinking back to this journey, and I want to thank. Even to making this possible, and we say we do this complimentary, we do have amazing sponsors. But before we talk about them in detail, these sponsors are not, we don't have advertising out there that says, hey, do you want to be our show sponsor? No, we've carefully selected these sponsors that align with the values and the vision of teaching tax flow. We even have a pickleball company, right? Because a lot of pickleballers like tax planning and strategy. It wouldn't be a show without me.
Oh, of course. I was waiting for it to come up somewhere. And Chris, if I can add to it too, right? Everything, I was asked this earlier on, and I think I kind of forgot about it for a while, and I can't remember who or where it was asked to me, but they go, well, why do I need something out there? I have a tax guy, or I have a tax gal or something, was their comment. And really what it is it's, we're not making this stuff up. It's not like we're educating ourselves at the same time that we're telling everybody what it is. Like, Chris, you guys have been doing, you personally been doing this for well over 20 years. So it's really, you've seen it all. You've been practicing it all, with clients, and you've seen this. So you've seen it, you've implemented it, you know how it works, you know how it's, accepted, I should say, by a client, a business, an individual, etc. And then now it's like teaching tax flow is taking everything that y'all know, and we're just putting it out there. Now, again, I feel like somebody asked me that question of, well, why do I need this? Well, it's not that, this is in any way, shape, or form out there and developed, created to replace your tax professional, right? It's to complement it, right? And frankly, sometimes, using one example, Chris, that I've seen, and we'll talk about cost segregation studies. Again, whole episode on it, whole lesson on it. Get on YouTube, watch it, watch the podcast. It's all there. Real estate specific. Some tax professionals may not be very in tune with real estate. It's as simple as that, right? So maybe you're interested in it, maybe your tax professional, your tax pro isn't comfortable with it, doesn't know enough about it, but they're not telling you not to do it. It helps you educate yourself. Maybe you can take something more to that relationship than just, hey, here's my numbers for the year, do it. But it's there for you. And again, I put this caveat out there, right? Like everything you do, obviously, there's disclaimers that we have to put out there. Obviously get that professional advice, but also a lot of these strategies, Chris, you mentioned a lot, they're used in conjunction with one another, blended, stacked, et cetera. They're there and they're intended to be used in certain ways. So, it's knowing enough about them makes you feel more comfortable in what maybe somebody's suggesting to you, right? And this content, again, it's tried and true, or say try and true, whatever that slogan is. It's proven is a better way to say it. So it's not like we're just saying this stuff, out of thin air, saying, hey, go try this. There's a lot more to it. But again, it's there. It's accessible now, I think, is the biggest thing. So don't have to sign up for a membership, free or paid. We had a basic and a premium one. Like we mentioned, it's here. Like literally, we've moved it all out there. And Chris, we've actually kind of inadvertently came up with a new tagline for ourselves, which I'll let you you tell everybody, because me being the marketing guy, I have to give credit to this guy because he actually came up with it. I had nothing to do with this. So kudos to you, buddy.
A lot of times you create something and if you try to describe it to someone, and sometimes you're so close to it, it's hard to describe. Or you're describing a person and I'm like, let's try to take teaching tax flow and make it into one tagline. What really is teaching tax flow? And ultimately, we came on this tagline. It's the voice of tax planning. That's it. Everything. And that voice is not one of our voices. That voice is our community. And extending from the voice of tax planning is a community. And that community has different pillars, and as far as content and as far as things that, private Facebook groups and social media and this podcast. But also it allows people that want to go farther and want help with that journey, want one-on-one coaching or personalized tax planning. It allows those opportunities as well. So wherever you fit in, and it also allows us, I'm just thinking over the last 2 years, all the places that we've been representing teaching tax flow, different corners of this country, different events, speaking engagements, educational engagements, articles, other podcasts that we've been on. It's really fascinating, all the, just how lucky we've been, and now, and look at what we've, and when I say we say this teaching tax flow community has accomplished without really a tagline. So we are the voice of tax planning. If you're listening to this, you're part of that voice. It's really a chorus, and we want you to jump in. We want you to be as involved as you'd like. And like John said, it's collaboration over competition. Let's say you have a tax professional you enjoy working with. Invite them too, right? This is a party for everybody. And the more people we have in our community, the better. And I want you, John, maybe as we talked about the changes. I have one other change that's kind of a cool thing.
You're getting a tattoo? You're getting a tattoo? A teaching tax flow tattoo? Oh, man.
we talk about our family sometimes and listen and we talk to a lot of other people in the community about their situations, but my oldest is really into music. So I challenged him. We talk about income shifting and paying your children, and I challenged him to create our intro or outro music. And he's taken that upon himself. So he's what you're going to hear today is something a 15-year-old, less than a year playing guitar. He's played other instruments, and he's going to continue to evolve his skills. And John, you're going to help him out.
Yeah.
So that's just something that I'm proud of as a parent, that he's taken that upon himself to as a challenge. And I guarantee you in a year, he's going to listen back to what he created, and he might cringe. I think it's great, but he might say, man, just like we look back at our podcast from number 1 to episode 3 and say, man, that's cringy. But at the time, you're real proud of it.
Yeah.
That's evolving and challenging yourself and being uncomfortable. You grow from not being comfortable. You don't grow from being comfortable. So that's one of the other changes. Just thinking, man, about all of the other things. So what do you think the future looks like?
It's going to be cool. I mean, I think, again, these changes that we've made. So here we are again, episode 100. We're triple digits into this. Our podcast is kind of organically shifted, as we mentioned earlier on, right? From one direction to another. It's just kind of meandered, like a stream. If you're looking, from bird's eye view, just kind of twists and turns, but it's still going in one direction. It's organically done that. I think our content as a whole has organically done that, right? Like you had mentioned earlier on, Chris, too. It's, I think we hit some main kind of high level topics earlier on in a lot of our stuff. And now the content is getting a little bit more in depth on each of those, which again, we're not having to necessarily come up with new topics, new ideas. It's just more detail focused within those, right? You have 10 houses. Well, you go in each house, there's 10 rooms. It's ever evolving, ever expanding. And I think it's going to continually do that. I mean, obviously year over year, there'll be some potential large shifts in some stuff that comes down from Congress and IRS and et cetera. And we follow that. So that's one big thing, that we're going to start doing too as an organization with our community and with our members is we're going to be a lot more, we should say publicly facing, but a lot of the information we're going to put out now, especially on social, we have a newsletter that we're doing. A lot of that is to really kind of become the source. Chris, as you just mentioned, the voice of tax planning and almost like the source that you can go to where you never have to worry about a couple things, right? Like you never have to worry about, oh, well, we're going to tell you all about this. And the only way to do this is to go through us. That's not the case. We're not saying, hey, here's a strategy, and the only way you can do that is by buying a product from us. It's never going to happen. Secondly, you never have to fact check in a sense. I mean, please feel free to do it, but you never have to worry about, is this content realistic? Is it truthful? Is it something that, is unethical? Is it this? We're very open with stuff. If something carries a higher risk with it, we talk about that. We literally talk. That's one of the things that we open with. So to answer your question, I mean, I can go on for a very long time about this. Our goal is just continually going in that direction. There is no finish line for us. There's not, hey, we're done. Like we continually evolve. Again, putting information, resources in everybody's hands on demand, bite-sized chunks, as much as you want. You can dig and deep, go further on, and you'll just finding more and more in it. So we're literally going in that direction. There's a lot of stuff coming out. And if I can kind of end on a couple things that I'll throw back to you, Chris, is, just on YouTube. So here we are, episode 100, there's over 30 of these lessons and courses that are on there. We're going to be adding more to them. To be totally honest, we're not going to commit to, hey, we're going to do one a week. We're going to do 2 a month. There's no commitment on how many of these we're going to do. It's more when things come up, we're going to release them, which is going to be more frequent now. And then again, staying in touch with us. So we'll drop plenty of links in the show notes here, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, everywhere you listen to these, there are show notes. Go in those show notes. There's going to be, this one will have more than most shows, but there'll be kind of a little bit of a list of all the resources we have. and connect with us and stay connected and follow. And we will be more than happy to send you these updates as we get them. And then, of course, we can get Chris's tattoo one day.
About the however, it is humbling where we all started. So excited. Understand that we are the voice of tax planning now, and we are here to help. And our community drives our content. With the election coming up, we're going to have so much cool stuff on that. We're going to talk about how, we're just putting stuff out. And just like anyone, where there's a labor of love, it's anyone who's in that situation. I agree. Like you said, John, when we see a topic, we're going to tackle it. And then we're going to create content. We're going to create a new YouTube video. We're also going to have some special events. We've got a lot of cool things planned for this community. So thank you for listening. Some of you have been listening since episode 1. Let's make another 100 episodes together. And we genuinely appreciate you. We've come a long way from the pizza box. We're on YouTube. I feel like our culture is approachable, practical, and professional. And part of that is kind of putting names with faces and getting some more guests on that can help you, ultimately, the listener, legally and ethically reduce it.
That's the best mic drop you can give, sir. So kind of echoing what Chris says, thank you everybody for sticking with us here, episode 100. We don't have birthday hats today. We just have some news to share with everybody. So again, thank you for chiming in for this one. Again, this one's a little bit outside of the norm for us. Obviously went a little bit longer than normal, but a lot of good things. Definitely challenge everybody to, just do it. Just literally do it. Follow exactly what Chris was saying that his son did and literally just wrote it. It might not be perfect today, but a non-perfect way of doing things today is better than looking back saying, I wish I would have done something. So there you go. I sound like your mother. I sound like your father. I sound like your grandparents telling you to just get off your rear and do it if you haven't. But again, thank you, everybody. Follow all those links that we're sending you. And of course, reach out. Any questions you have. We love this way more than we probably should. So we will see everybody back here next week. Different topic, roughly the same time, and clearly a new way of doing things here on the Teaching Tax Flow podcast.
The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Cabin Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine the risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum.